Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Emily Kuda. I'm Percona's Senior Manager of Marketing Programs, and we'll get started in just a moment. First, I just want to conduct a little bit of housekeeping. Can you raise your hand using the hand icon to let me know that you can hear me? Great. Next, during this webinar, you will be on mute. Should you have any questions during the discussion, please enter them in the questions field within the control panel. At the end of the webinar, we'll take time to answer as many questions as possible. Those that aren't addressed will be answered in a follow-up blog entry on Percona's database performance blog. In addition, a recording of this webinar will be made available to everyone within 48 hours or less, along with the slides. So with that said, I'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar as we talk about Percona software and services presented by Percona CEO Peter Zaitsev. Take it away, Peter.
Hey, thanks, Emily. Good morning, afternoon, or wherever time of day it is in your location. Let's get started. And in this webinar, I'm going to talk about what's latest, what's going on in our services, as well as in Percona software. So let me start by talking about Percona solutions and services. And I think a great way to start is by reiterating our purpose, which is to champion unbiased open source database solutions. Now, what does that really mean for you? That means that as a business, we provide you with solutions for open source databases, such as support, consulting, training, remote DBA. And we also create and release a lot of software. And that software is 100% free and open source, because we believe that is a great way we can help our customers to avoid software vendor lock-in and really eliminate a lot of extra cost for that and get all the other values. And specifically, we provide an open source alternatives to many enterprise software features or editions in MySQL and MongoDB space. Now, as Percona, while we support, while we create some software which carries our name, we support a very broad ecosystem. We don't just support Percona Server or Percona XtraDB cluster. We also support MySQL or MariaDB, as well as MongoDB and different cloud variants, such as Amazon RDS or the Google Cloud SQL. And I believe that is a very important value proposition out there, because the answer what is the most optimal technology to run for you, it will depend, right? And we see many companies which may have a different choices for many applications. So for example, some companies would have some production done on the MySQL or Percona XtraDB cluster, while they do a lot of development with Amazon RDS, because that makes it so easy for them, the developers, just to spin up the MySQL instance they need. And we are fine supporting such mixed environments. Now, we also spend a lot of time specializing in specific options for platform as a service and infrastructure as a service solutions, right? Like as you see on this slide, pretty much majority of an important modern technologies which has to do with cloud, container, and what's not, we got you covered. Now, many of folks, especially who has known Percona for 10 years or more, may think about us as performance consulting experts. That means you call us to help you resolve the problems which already happened, right? And now that is not really where Percona is right now. We are really focused on helping you through your entire life cycle, right? From development of your application to deployment of your application to really maintaining that application until eventually retire that. And this really comes through 3 areas of how we position our services. Our Percona consultant, that is our expertise to handle specific projects. Those projects may be one-time engagement, like maybe you are doing migration to the cloud and would write some extra help, or that could be something which is more of a long-term nature, right? Maybe you need the staff augmentation where you want consultant to work with for half a year or more as a part of your team, few days a week. We can provide that as well. Now, Percona Managed Services, that is our DBA services, and this is if you do not want to really think about databases, deal with databases. If you want somebody else to take care of that problem, that is where Percona Managed Services stands for you. And finally, we have their support offerings, which is if you have the team on staff in-house and just would like a little extra help for us to advise you how to get things done, how to do better with software, or provide some of the services you don't have in-house, such as, for example, implementing the bug fixes for software, right? Now, the Percona services can be used individually, in this case, or together. For example, a lot of our customers would use both support and consulting together. We would support their team at all times, and then they need a little bit extra helps, right, to do, for example, major MySQL version upgrades. Then we would provide that help to them. Now, one of the unique things we have at Percona is what we provide and one support agreement to cover multiple technologies. So, for example, if your company has MySQL and MariaDB and MongoDB, right, in the company, we can be that vendor which provides support for all of them under one agreement with the same terms, same systems you can use to file the cases, and this can be a very cost-effective compared to many other options available out there. Now, another thing I think which is good to talk about is the cloud. Now, many of you know what cloud changes almost everything, right? And so what are we really doing and how Percona offerings changes with that reality, what we are running more and more applications in the cloud. Now, if you look at the cloud, there are 2 kind of dimensions you often have to be looking at. First one is where are you running your software, right? Are you running it in a public cloud? Are you running that in a private cloud? Or maybe you are using a hybrid cloud, right, which is a combination of both. Or maybe you have some environments which are just run in non-cloud. You have, bare metal in your own data center. Now, when you look at their cloud environments, we also see their databases can be run in different ways, right? Like if you're embracing Amazon Web Services, you may choose to run the MySQL do-it-yourself, just use the EC2 instances and put backups on S3 and so on and so forth. Or you can use a database as a service, such as Amazon RDS or Amazon Aurora. Now, reality of what combination is going to be the best choice for given company or given application is going to vary, and that is it is the very valuable what we at Percona support you across all of that kind of environments. Right, both wherever your company just has one environment it runs, or wherever you have some hybrid environment, wherever as a part of your transition into the cloud or as a permanent state of things. We also at Percona are building a very strong partnerships, and especially with a leader in the cloud space, Amazon Web Services. Right, we are a member of AWS Partner Network, with we are consulting partner and especially partner with core competence in their Amazon RDS and Aurora. We can help you in a lot of ways here. We can help you, for example, to plan and execute migration to the cloud wherever you are using database as a service or infrastructure as a service approach to databases. We have a lot of Amazon RDS and Aurora experience, and we really have a strong partnership to help you with very advanced solutions and complicated problems. Right. So, for example, if there are some things which are not working right, you are seeing some, bugs or different behaviors in Amazon Aurora, we can help you to troubleshoot them, even if you don't have direct access to the source code through our relationship with AWS. Now, what we can also help you with the cloud is to save money, right? What is wonderful about cloud is you are spending money pretty much every month, right? And what that means, unlike with your classical data server environments where you may already had that costs to invest it in the hardware, right? So if you just have less software, less servers used, you're not or really getting any benefits realized, right? Or if you are, let's say, have a less disk space used, then in the cloud, all of those will be realized pretty much immediately. For example, for one of our customers, Lookout, we had the space help to save cloud spend by $500,000, right? By really helping them to optimize their footprint. Another thing to talk about when it relates to the cloud is really changing the role of a DBA, right? Now, what is changed? If you look at the DBA in your kind of classical, not cloud environments, then DBA often have to spend a lot of time on the operational basics, right? Sometimes you have a hardware fails, sometimes replication breaks, sometimes your backups didn't run properly, and so on and so forth. In terms of the cloud, especially if you're running database as a service solution, cloud takes care of all of those basics. And as a DBA, you have more time to spend on that high value activities, like helping your development team to develop better applications, go to market faster, make sure your architecture scales, and so on and so forth. And that is there you need really experience. Because if a lot of your time is to spend, I don't know, let's say, troubleshooting MySQL replication, which is a related rudimentary skill, right, and a lot of people can do, that's one thing. Then if you have to architect your database for an optimal application, that is requires much more skill to do that. And here is the good diagram which to show here, right? If you look at the kind of classic DBA, then spend a lot of time at platform and database operations, monitoring and alerting, then cloud DBA will be spending more time on application design, performance, database architecture design, and so on and so forth, right? Which is much more focused on the growth focus and contributing much more value to your business. Okay. Now, one thing that we are proud of at Percona is our customer satisfactions. So, over the last 12 months, we have almost 99% of our customer satisfaction with our services, and we are really taking a very close look at those numbers, because if all of our process, all of our software being open source, we really need to make sure what our services are second to none, and they have really the value on their own. Okay, Let's now talk about the Percona software. And I am going to talk here about their most important open source software which we release. To remind you, in terms of Percona software principles, all our software is 100% free and open source. We don't have any kind of restricted enterprise version, which is only available to subscribers. You can for all software you download and install, you can keep using that or use it wherever you are subscribing to our services or not. We are not doing open core, or and we are also not doing this model where open source becomes open source eventually, right? Like in a few years time frame, right? So you are only allowed to use a very old software version if you want to stick to open source, right? In our model is pretty plain, simple, and very open source friendly. So Percona Server for MySQL. So what exactly do we provide here? If you look at this diagram, if you look at the, we take the MySQL Community Edition as a base, and we apply some additional bug fixes to that, various performance improvements and others. We also add enterprise features, or pretty much a lot of equivalents of what MySQL Enterprise offers, and also number of community features from their thought leaders, such as Facebook. And we really take that through a very high grade of their quality assurance process to make sure what we have the software which even the most demanding companies can depend on. Another important thing with Percona Server is what we promise: 100% compatibility with MySQL 5.7. Right. So if something in Percona Server does not work as in MySQL, we consider that as a bug with no chivots and so on and so forth. That is very different, for example, than how MariaDB defines MySQL compatibility, right? There, in their case, they do both. MariaDB speaks kind of same MySQL protocol, but a lot of features present in MySQL are not present in MariaDB, and vice versa, right? Or you would find the optimizers are very different between releases and so on and so forth. A lot of other focus for us is better performance on the high-end workloads, especially, right? And I think that is important to understand. If you are not running high-end workload, frankly, you would have a good enough performance with pretty much any MySQL variant out there, right? But if you really want to get the most out of your hardware because you are running some very serious loads, using a lot of memory, fast disk, you're dealing maybe with tens of thousands connections, that is where features in Percona Server can help you. And we also invest a lot in improved security and observability because, again, we believe these are very important for high-value deployments we focus on. The important news is Percona Server, what MyROX, right, that is a RocksDB based storage engine, is now generally available in Percona Server. And this is storage engine, which was created in Facebook. It really offers a lot of compressions and much more efficient storage use in terms of I/O operations, especially for writes, which comes with some other features such as a faster data loading, faster replications, and so on. Now, at this point, as Facebook reported in a number of presentations, they moved their main databases from InnoDB to MyROX. And this illustration shows how that works. If you look in their case, they had machines which would not use a lot of I/O capacity or CPU, but was limited by amount of space the systems would have in their directly attached flash storage, right? Now, with in that environment, that allowed for significant consolidation. And we can see in this case, we now, because RocksDB takes less I/O, right, and less space, you can actually put twice amount of stuff on the same box and still have CPU and I/O to spare by using MyRocks, getting 2-to-1 consolidation. Now, I think it's also important to show how MyRocks can save costs specifically in the cloud, right? What is interesting in the cloud? What your storage and provision I/O capacity is dynamic, right? It's very easy for you to go ahead and resize your EBS volume or the provision a different number of storage IOPS for a volume. You can also relatively easy to go to the instances which has more powerful directly attached storage, like, or less powerful if you like. With MyRocks, you can pretty much have even in worst cases half space and half IO, right, as Facebook storage, and so that's pretty much you can half your storage costs, and through that, even in a semi worst case scenario, you can spend 20% of your database environment spent, right? If you are having a data which is highly compressible, or or if you have the very write-intensive workloads, you may be looking at the storage, which is much higher than that. Now, as a part of this time, where MySQL 8 is nearing GA, we are really shifting a lot of focus towards Percona Server 8, right? So there are a lot of other features coming in Percona Server 5.7 to report. The next product to talk about is Percona XtraBackup. And Percona XtraBackup is #1 open source hot backup solutions for MySQL. And this is pretty much our alternative to MySQL Enterprise Backup. You can see that as our the example of that enterprise-only solution, right, from a MySQL ecosystem. Percona XtraBackup is pretty powerful. It offers parallel backups, incremental backups, streaming, encryption, and it supports MySQL, MariaDB, Percona Server, Percona XtraDB cluster, and so on and so forth. Now, since last time we spoke, there are really no new features for me to report, because we are really working hard on MySQL 8 support in Percona XtraBackup. Because with MySQL 8, there are a lot of on-disk storage changes, and we need to put a lot of work in development and testing, because really we don't want to be joking with our backup solution, because we really care about data. Now, I think our commitment to quality in Percona XtraBackup is very well noticed and acknowledged. And we see what Percona XtraBackup is now recommended solution for migrating MySQL data to Amazon RDS and Aurora by the Amazon themselves. And we are very proud to see Percona XtraBackup selected as such a tool. Percona Toolkit is our Swiss Army knife of tools, which help DBAs to be more efficient and help them to later make less mistakes by doing one command instead of potentially many manual steps. And Percona Toolkit supports MySQL, MariaDB, Percona Server, cloud variants, as well as MongoDB. In the last few months, I've been also working a lot on the MySQL 8 support in Percona Toolkit, right? And there is some of support is available even before MySQL 8 goes GA. We also added support for MyRocks storage engine, and also support for JSON output format for some tools, which really makes it much more useful if you want to integrate that with some sort of scripting. Now let us look at Percona Server for MongoDB. Percona Server for MongoDB pretty much follows the same concept as Percona Server for MySQL. You can see we're also doing additional fixes, performance improvements, enterprise features, or like some community features. In this case, frankly, mostly created by ourselves at Percona, and some additional quality assurance process. Right now, we have Percona Server for MongoDB 3.4 available, which is compatible with MongoDB 3.4 Community Edition, and which, as well as Percona Server for MySQL, has alternatives for many MongoDB enterprise features, and which also includes MongoRocks, RocksDB-based storage engine, as well as Percona Memory Engine, which is, well, pretty much equivalent to their in-memory storage engine, which is available in the Enterprise Edition for Percona Server for MongoDB. Yeah, so here are some of the features which are available in Percona Server for MongoDB. It's good. I would especially pay attention to the built-in hot backup option for WireTiger and MongoRocks. That is something which is very important, as well as we have a query sampling features which make MongoDB much more useful with Percona monitoring management, when you can really get a complete picture of all your queries without without large overhead of logging every single query for analysis. Now you may ask, so what is going on in support for MongoDB 3.6? Now, at this point, we shipped Percona Server for MongoDB beta version, and we are really expecting the GA release of Percona Server for MongoDB 3.6 in the coming month, right? So we are very very close to that. Okay, Percona XtraDB cluster. The Percona XtraDB cluster is our high availability solution for MySQL, and it is based on Percona Server of 5.7 with as well as Galera libraries, right, and includes a lot of additional polish features and quality assurance done by Percona. Now, Percona XtraDB cluster is particularly well designed to work in the cloud, because it offers you master replication with conflict avoidance, and you can really use its automatic node provisioning features for after scaling and self-healing, right? So, for example, you can configure the cluster, and if it's of a free nodes, and if it cannot handle the load, it's very easy to spin up another node, which will just join the cluster, register itself and load balancer, and now you're having 4 nodes serving traffic instead of free. Now, to be fair, that works mostly for scaling reads, not writes, but for this purpose, it works pretty well. In terms of new features, in PXE 5.7, we have now added their state transfer-free extended maintenance support, right? And what that means is, now if you need to do some sort of maintenance, and you want to make sure you avoid their SST, which is kind of expensive process where all the data have to be copied through the network, you can configure the cluster so it will buffer all the changes, right? And then the server which you take down for maintenance can simply catch up on that backlog after start. We also have parallel SST support, and this is very very important. That means what you can support for much larger cluster sets without having extensively long SST support. So we have seen folks who are using 10 gigabit network or more, or like multiple 10 gigabit Ethernet or 40 gigabit links, can have a PXE node size of 10 terabytes or more without SSD being a huge problem. We also implemented a system single cluster state view, right? So that's we provide a new view which pretty much allows you to get a very good overview of Percona XtraDB cluster. Now, a feature which is now have been few months old, but we're still very proud of that, is the performance improvements, right? I mean, if you're running some very old PXE versions such as 5.6 or maybe all the 5.7 versions, we would recommend you to upgrade. You can really, for write-intensive workloads, get a very significant performance boost due to improvements in concurrency control. Okay. Next goes Percona Monitoring Management. And Percona Monitoring Management is our comprehensive database-focused monitoring solution, which is 100% free and open source. It's roll your own solution. You can install it in any cloud you want, right? Or in your own non-cloud environment. And we really designed that to be easy to install and use, right? And that is solutions which supports MySQL, MariaDB, MongoDB, as well as the cloud database variants. Now, we have created Percona Monitoring Management because we see while at least the core software version, core server software, MySQL community, then MariaDB, MongoDB community, right, they're available as an open source. There are pretty much no open source monitoring solutions out there available, which is specifically tailored for monitoring databases, right? You would see fair amount of very good commercial monitoring solutions, right? MongoDB Ops Manager, MySQL Enterprise Monitor, MonYogs, SolarWinds, and so on and so forth, as well as cloud solutions such as Vivid Cortex, New Relic, Datadog, and what's not. But if you really want the open source solution, very well known, and with our commitment of providing you 100% free and open source solution, we wanted to create one. So here are a few features what the Percona Monitoring Management offers. You can see what queries are causing the load on your systems. Then you can go ahead and see why those queries are causing that load, right? So in this case, for example, you can see in terms of a response time, we spend about 10% waiting on the I/O, right? That means, hey, well, if we optimize the I/O, that's not going to impact that query that much. As well as provide additional information about how to improve that query performance. That means we provide you examples of those particular queries, create table, explain either through JSON or classical explain, as well as additional information for the tables. Now, when it comes to the Percona Monitoring and Management, it moves fast, much faster than our server-side software, and that is by design, right? The monitor application development can proceed much faster than the core database software. So, what has happened since the last time I did this presentation? One, we are now available on the Amazon marketplace, where you can pretty much deploy Percona Monitoring and Management server component with a couple of clicks, right, from AWS marketplace. And if you do that, then we would also encourage you to update that at once, because it takes for us some time to go through certification process with Amazon. So, for example, you can see the latest version of PMM available on AWS is 1.6, where we are already at 1.8, right? So if you use this feature, make sure to updated straight after update. We also added the native Amazon RDS and Amazon Aurora support. So that means if you install PMM from Amazon or Marketplace, for example, you can pretty much enter your credential, press Discover button, and it will show you all their your RDS and Amazon Aurora nodes, where you can pretty much click to enable PMM or to monitor them, and that's all you need to do. We also have added a lot of support for very specific Amazon Aurora and RDS features, like an example before here, where we use their information from a CloudWatch, as well as an additional status variables reported by Amazon Aurora to provide you with deeper insights. We also redesigned now our home dashboards of PMM, which really provides you now nice overview in terms of how many systems you monitor and what is their general performance and health in terms of CPU usage, disk throughput, number of database connections and queries, and so on, and so on and so forth, right? Which easily allows you to get to the information you're looking for with just a couple of clicks. Now, another thing what we added is a really in-depth Prometheus dashboards. But Prometheus, that is a time series data store which stores all their time series information Prometheus uses, and that dashboard can really be very helpful if you're looking to troubleshoot performance of PMM itself. And that became important because we now see the PMM adoption by a lot of large deployments, which are looking to monitor hundreds of nodes with a single PMM installation, and that is where you can be putting significant stress on their PMM itself, especially if you have not sized that appropriately. Another feature for monitoring is the additional information about the exporter. And the exporter is the data collection process which exists in PMM, right? So you can really see in this case the overhead which that exporter cause, the resource usage, what kind of collectors, right? What collecting what kind of information is taking a lot of time, and so on and so forth. And why that is important, because by default we provide a lot of we configure PMM to capture a lot of very detailed information for you, which is very helpful for advanced troubleshooting, but also in some environments it can cause significant overhead. And those features, they allow you to understand what that overhead is coming from and really control the overhead through their different changes. Another feature which we added is what we call Advanced Data Exploration Dashboard, which pretty much allows you to browse all the available metrics which are stored for all the hosts, which can use a lot of helpful features. Like, for example, in this case, I'm looking at our environment, and I can notice what energy buffer pool size is different on the different nodes. Maybe that is intentional, or maybe that is their oversight. In any case, I can really see that very quickly. I also would be able to see if I chose to change the buffer pool, right? If buffer pool size was changed, for example, over last week, right? That's all would be very clearly seen on this graph. Now, another feature is what we have now ability to monitor pretty much anything with external exporter support. As I mentioned, we support MySQL, MariaDB, Amazon RDS, MongoDB, Proxy SQL out of the box. But pretty much you can make PMM to monitor anything which has Prometheus exporter supported, right? And in this case, we are showing an example of starting PostgreSQL exporter, enabling that as external service, which starts with data capture, and then we can pretty much install the standard Postgres dashboard from Grafana network, and voila, you have your PostgreSQL data in PMM. As I mentioned, with MyRocks going GA, we also added MyRocks support to the Percona monitoring management, where you can see a lot of details about the MyRocks operations in PMM. And obviously, as the time goes and as we are getting more experience operating PMM in production and taking your feedback, we are going to grow and extend our MyRocks support in PMM. Another dashboard, which I find pretty cool, is really getting in-depth analysis of a CPU usage, right? Where you can really take a look at the CPU usage on the given node, and you can see here how different CPU cores are being used, what kind of CPUs you're getting on the different cores, as well as what is the maximum CPU per core CPU usage. Because in a lot of modern environments, you would find what your CPU, which has like maybe 20 cores or maybe more, doesn't show what there is a lot of CPU usage, but actually one of the cores may be completely saturated, either with running some process which doesn't is not able to parallelize itself over multiple cores, or maybe some kernel level activity such as all interrupts being driven to single CPU core or stuff like that. With these dashboards, you can really diagnose a lot of those advanced CPU usage problems. And now I would also encourage you here to just go ahead and see it live with pmmdemo.percona.com, and you can see those dashboards in action and much, much more. Now, it is also that time of the year when we are a few short weeks away from Percona Live Santa Clara, right, which is taking place in April in Santa Clara, California. And you can see here there are a lot of the famous companies which are speaking on this conference, and we do have a much more expanded agenda this time, where we cover MySQL, MongoDB, MariaDB, as well as a lot of new areas of how we run databases. For example, using containers appropriately, running database across a variety of clouds, and so on and so forth. And with that, thank you. And now I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for that, Peter. At this time, go ahead and enter your questions down in the questions panel. And any of the questions that we couldn't answer before we conclude today will be answered in a follow-up blog entry. So Peter, our first question is, how does MyRocks compare with TokuDB in terms of storage space and performance?
Well, again, that is a very good question. And in this case, I would say the Mark Callaghan from Facebook, he has posted extensively over the last few months the benchmarks in about TokuDB and RocksDB, and really we have a slightly different sweet spots among them, because their MyRocks and RocksDB is LSM based storage engine, right? And it has all implication what that provides, right, with the compaction and everything. TokuDB is a fractal trees based engine, which is kind of a very different data structure, which you can think about as B-trees with a lot of intermediate buffering. Now, with that setup, what that means is what in certain cases where TokuDB may be more expensive in terms of CPU, right? But at the same time, it may be easier to configure in certain cases, right? And it may be perform better for some single lookups compared to MyRox, where you would potentially need to go to a lot of SS tables for lookups, right? If you're especially if your Bloom filters are not configured appropriately. Now, this is probably like some that complicated question. I would say what over time we will see much more practical information about what use cases TokuDB is having and what MyRox is having. The reality is what we are going to support both storage engines for foreseeable future, right? And we are continuing to work on TokuDB as well as on MyRox, right? So for example, in one of the latest versions of Percona Server, we added performance schema instrumentation for TokuDB. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Let's see. Our next question was, how would you suggest migrating to PostgreSQL to MySQL? Is there any known like enterprise migration tool available?
Well, that is a good question. I honestly cannot advise you specifically on the tools, right? And I think that is what depends a lot on their on the environment, right, and what the needs are. There are yeah, I mean, I cannot tell exactly about the tools for that.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. Let's see. Our next question is, MongoDB is encrypted WireTiger like MongoDB Enterprise on the development timeline?
Yes. So in due time, we will support their encryption in MongoDB. Like currently, we do have solutions if you want to run Percona Server over MongoDB or even MongoDB Community Edition, right? There are pretty solid options how you can implement encryptions through the Linux file system encryption, which is often good enough for a lot of compliance requirements, what we have seen.
Thank you. Let's see. Our next question is, when do you plan for Percona's monitoring and management to support alerting?
Well, that is a good question. Now, if you look at the simple alerting support, then it is already out there. PMM is based on Grafana, and Grafana does support alerting, right? And so for that, PMM does. Now, if you, but it's kind of, it can be a little bit cumbersome to set those up. And in the future, we are planning to provide some more advanced alerting functionality in PMM, but I cannot tell you specifically when that's going to be made available.
Thank you. Let's see. Our next question is, do you know when MySQL 8 is going to be released?
Well, that is a good question. I mean, we know two facts. Is one, Oracle doesn't exactly specify their release dates in advance, and I think a lot of that depends on when the engineering will be quite ready with that. I think it will be in the final stages because there is a release candidate for MySQL 8 is available at this point, and I would hope for that to happen somewhere in the Q2.
Thank you. Two-part to that question. And then Once MySQL 8 is released, do we know when Percona Server is going to match?
Well, yeah. So we are already working on Percona Server 8, and typically we release Percona 8 few months after after MySQL appropriate version is released, and a lot of that depends not only on us merging the code and doing our testing, but also on waiting for the GA release to really stabilize, right? Because how things happen is right now, very few people are really trying MySQL 8 under high loads right now because it's not GA and it's not recommended for production use, right? But guess what? When MySQL 8 is going to be put in those high load requirements, the first releases will spot some of the bugs and limitations, right? And typically their first few releases after GA will have a lot of those fixes. And typically we at Percona, we want to assess the quality and make sure a lot of those kind of baby problems, right, of a new major release are worked out before we release Percona Server 8, right? So when you have Percona Server 8 available as a GA, you can migrate to that with confidence, expecting a lot of those problems already being in the past.
Thank you. Let's see, our next question is, do you support MySQL group replication?
Yes, that is a good question, right? Obviously, we have Percona XtraDB cluster, which provides kind of alternative technology and kind of really older and in some cases more featureful technology for this kind of replication environments and MySQL group replication is. But when I said that we support all MySQL 5.7 features with no exception, I meant that. And MySQL group replication is a feature of MySQL 5.7 Community Edition, and which is supported in a Percona Server 5.7, and which is also supported by Percona support team as well.
Thank you, Peter. And let's see, just looking to see if there's any other questions. Just give a couple more minutes. I think that's all of them at this time. I'll wait a couple more minutes in case anybody else has follow-up questions.
Okay, well, that is good. I'm glad to be able to answer all questions they are. So if there are no more questions, then thank you everyone for attending.
All right, that looks like that concludes our webinar. Thank you so much for presenting today, Peter, and thank you so much everybody for attending today. Oh, wait, hold on. One more snuck in.
Okay, yeah.
Is MyRock's database better compared to InnoDB for high writes?
Yeah, that is a very good a good question. Yes, so high writes and especially high ingest rate, right, and you insert a lot of the data volumes, is what MyRocks has been specifically designed for, right? But the caveat here is what we are looking at the large data sets. Typically for writes which happen in memory, right? So for example, if your data set is very small and fits in memory, then InnoDB is actually likely to be faster. If your data set is significantly larger than the amount of memory, then for writes specifically, MyRocks is likely to be substantially faster.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that, Peter. Okay, now that's that's the end of the questions. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it for joining us today. And thank you so much, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Bye then.
Bye.